I'm Alan Mundy, and this is Festival Favorites, where we're going to learn, or I'm going to teach some of my personal favorites that I like to go around the country and play, and hopefully after you learn them, they'll be your favorites also. Let's get right into it by first tuning up, and I've tuned up with my electronic tuner, and hopefully I'll be able to pass that on to you. And we'll start with the first string, which is a D. The second string is B. The third string is G. Fourth string D. And then the fifth string is G. Let's get underway with the great old country instrumental standard, Under the Double Eagle. Originally I learned to play this on the guitar and heard Alan Shelton play it on the banjo and tried to incorporate some of the things that he did and some of the things that I had learned as a guitar player into my arrangement. So let's get underway with Under the Double Eagle. Okay, now let's go through it real slowly, and we'll look at all the left hand and right hand fingerings that go along to make up this version of Under the Double Eagle, which I had a great time playing it there. I hope you all enjoy it also. And it starts with some real common pickup note ideas. Then when you get to the first measure, what you're going to do is pinch the third string and the first string together. And then this is all kind of a tricky timing things in here. It could be, so you have to watch it real closely, and it'll go like this. You'll pinch one more time, and that would be the first measure. Then the second measure does a similar thing, except it starts on a sort of a skip lick. So the first two measures together sound like this. Then the third measure is relatively simple. And really we haven't gotten into any rolls yet. Those are mostly just pinches and those little skip licks. And that's kind of what I got from the Alan Shelton version, which I like that sort of rhythmical feel a whole lot. And then we're going to do a slide on the second string from the third string from the second to the third fret and do a forward reverse roll. And then we're going to the next measure, which is, and that's just a sort of a Foggy Mountain breakdown roll with your right hand, and then moving back to the first fret of the second string at the end of the measure. And then the next measure is, and you want to try that again because it has some little single string thing where you're playing 2 notes on the same string, 1st fret of the 2nd string, and then you're sounding that with your thumb, and then following the 2nd string open plucked by your index finger. And then your thumb will pluck the 3rd string while your 2nd finger is on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So you have, and then we have the 1st ending, which is this. And that's a forward roll with a slide from the 2nd to the 4th fret, and then followed like that. And the tricky part is that it sort of flops over into the 2nd measure with that middle finger sounding the 1st string, and then you have to duck your index finger back in to catch the 3rd string to make that pickup note passage start like that. So you have the 1st ending sounds like this at a slow tempo. And if you can kind of sound that 3rd string with your index finger just a little harder, it clues you in to, and the listening audience in, that you're going back into those pickup notes. And then you would repeat the whole A part. Then we're going to get to the 2nd ending, and it's just your standard bluegrass fill lick. And I'm sure you all know that by now. And then we're going to leap up here to a C chord, which is up the neck, out of that position there, but we're only going to use initially the 1st and the 2nd strings. So it'll sound like this in the 2nd ending. And what that is just a forward roll. And then out of this C chord, you're going to bring your 3rd finger down on the 10th fret of the 2nd string to sound that portion of it. And moving on, we're still in a C chord, and we're going to go. And what that is, that's your 2nd string with your thumb, and then that little skip lick that I like so much, which is that. Then a alternating pattern with your right hand, thumb, index, thumb, middle, across a C chord, like that. And we're going to drop down into this C position where you're like this. And I would suggest, some people want to get their C chord like this, but I would suggest using your 3rd finger to get the 1st string at the 2nd fret, so that your 2nd finger is free to do other things, which we're going to be doing in this particular thing. Then we're just going to do a forward roll, and then another measure, which is a forward reverse roll. And when we come back on the reverse part of that roll, there's the forward part. We're going to lift the 3rd finger off and then put our 2nd finger down on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So those 2 measures sound like this. I may have played that wrong. Let me try it again. I guess that was right. And then the next 2 measures is 2 measures of forward reverse rolls with the right hand, which is that. And what we're going to do is do a similar thing that we just did, which is the forward part of the roll is on a C. Then we're going to lift our 3rd finger up and put our 2nd finger down and do a forward or the reverse part of the roll. And then the same thing again. Then we're going to do a forward reverse roll that is a slide and then a pull off on the 3rd string, 2nd fret to the 3rd fret. Then after you hit the G string open, we're going to do a slide on the 1st string from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret. And we're going to use just a forward roll. Then we have some single note portion here, which goes once again. And I use my second finger here and my little finger at the 7th fret. And then when we get to this point, you hit the 5th fret, or you're fretting the 5th fret of the 1st string, play your 5th string open, and then you do this. Now this is kind of tricky, and I would suggest doing it this way because I think it's a better way to do this. It gets more clarity out of this passage. Is you use your middle finger on the 1st string certainly, but you use your thumb on the 2nd string rather than your index finger. But then when you come off onto the open strings, use your index finger because the next part is another forward roll for 2 measures. Then we have a little way of getting out of that forward roll. So let me play that whole section just so we can have a good point of reference. Okay, and then here we go into the next little passage, and this is sort of a Doug Billard kind of a thing. That starts with your index finger on the 3rd string, and then a forward roll. So it's then a forward roll with a slide. And then here's that same idea again, where you use your thumb on the 2nd string. Okay, then we're going to play a forward roll across a G augmented chord. And you get an augmented chord by, in this instance, by putting your 1st finger at the 1st fret of the 1st string. And that brings us back to C. All right, now the second time through this passage is the same as the first for about 4 measures or so, where you have this. Okay, now here's the tricky chordal part in this thing, is we're going to go for a C chord for the first part of a forward reverse roll, then we're going to go to a G7 for the second part of the roll, then we're going to go to a C7, which is fingered like this, 1st finger at the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and then I use my 3rd finger on the 2nd string at the 5th fret, my 4th finger at the 5th string of the 5th fret, 1st string. Too many numbers here. And you do a forward reverse roll, and then when you, on the second half of it, what you'll do is you'll lift your little finger up, and your 3rd finger will be barring at the 3rd fret, so you'll have this. I'll try to get my 2nd finger out of the way so you can see. And that makes a real nice sound with a little bit of tension in it, and what you get are the chords that move like this. But we put rolls with them. And then we're on our F chord. Once again, this will be a forward reverse roll, changing the chords in mid-roll. F, A, 7th, then to D minor. So that whole passage will sound like this. Okay, now at this point, you stop on this, your roll here. And what I do is just sort of a slide for effect. And you can put it in or leave it out. And then we're going to jump up here to the 10th fret, and I get them fingered like this, as you can see. And we're going to do reverse rolls beginning with your middle finger on the 1st string. And this is sort of an Earl Scruggs thing from Home Sweet Home. And it'll go like this. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Here it is. That's that whole passage. And what you need to do is just study the tablature real closely and see that how many times you have to do those forward reverse rolls, and then you shift from this chord to this position, to this, and then to here. And that brings us down to our C chord, and we do a little like that. And that's just a forward roll and then a reverse at the very end. And we do our little ending passage, which is, then we're going to do a trill, which is a hammer-on and a pull-off. Fifth string, open first, open fifth, and then back to C. So that's... Okay, now here we're at the end of the tune, and we're going to change back to, or modulate back to the key of G, since we've changed to the key of C. By doing this, we're going to go C, C sharp to D. And then here is a duet part I played on the recording on the Festival Favorites record that I played with the mandolin, but it works well just on its own if you'd like to work through it. And you do some, we're in now in the G position that's up the neck here. It looks like this. And we play some pickup notes, and we do this, which is a pull off on the third string, 7th to the 6th fret, and then that's on the 2nd string. And then these all are chord positions, or intervals. That's like a C chord to a G, to this G, and then we're going to do a roll here. And then back to the what looks like a C, and we play this passage, which is in intervals. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Here it is. So you want to work on that and get all those shifts down. And you can see how I finger it. I won't go through the details of it like this, and then I use this for what some people might play as a bar, but you can work that out for your own, whatever works well for you. And after you play that, then you would play the first part, or I'm sorry, you would go into the C part, and you'd play all the way to the end. And then I'm going to show you the little ending I put on there that also comes from Alan Shelton. And when you get to this part here, and you land on your C note, instead of walking up and starting all over again, which you could do if you have another instrumentalist playing with you, is to put this ending on there, which is this. And that's a single note, your C note. Then you do a pinch on the open first string and the open fifth string, and then a pull off. Then you watch the tablature, and you play your second string, and then do a single string playing on your third string, ending on a C note, and then you strum this chord here. And I don't know if you can see it, but that's a C chord like this. You bring your third finger over to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and you have this position. Your first string is open, and you strum, and you get a C6-9 chord is what that's called, and that's a good ending chord. And with that ending chord, we'll move on to our next piece. All right, there is Salt Creek, a great old tune that I tried to learn from Bill Keith, and have some fiddle players in the Texas-Oklahoma area that I've worked with on that tune. And let's get right into the instruction on that one. Okay, this tune, or my arrangement of this tune, begins with a slide from the 2nd to the 5th fret. And I want to remind you to keep your finger down the whole way, and when you get to the 5th fret, leave it there. It sort of adds to the G sound that we're after. Gets that resonance going. Then it's followed by a pinch. Then so that first measure is. Then the next measure is sort of a critical part of the tune, like that. And what you want to work on is this single string, where you start on your right hand with your thumb, index, thumb, and then your index plays the second string. And then with your left hand, what you want to work on is not playing these notes too short, giving them as much value as you can and still move on and play in tempo. So one thing you might practice is just in tempo as you pat your foot, or is to put your finger down on the downbeat and lift it up to where it's at its highest point on the offbeat, and then back down on the downbeat. So your left hand also has a cadence, as your right hand does. Your left hand does also, and it helps get you a nice smooth sound when you get in there, and it'll make it not quite so choppy. And then if we go on, you land on a C note, then it's followed by this skip lick that I call it, where it's just your fifth string and your first string. So it's, then we're going to move on to the F chord, and this has it's out of this position here, with your first, or your little finger not covering the first string, and it's open. And then you do a similar single string passage. And again, work on lifting that finger off and getting those fingers to work in cadence and nice and smooth. And then here's a neat little lick that's in the fourth measure, where you go. And what that involves is your first, second frets, third string. Then your index finger, which I don't do very often, I bring over and sound the fourth string. So it's. Then you end up on your thumb on the fourth string, and then that little skip lick. Then we're back into a repeat of the opening phrase, but now we're going to use a forward roll. Like that. It's with the slide. The same as before. And now the ending two measures. And that's sort of like an old Joe Clark kind of a lick, and it's one of the harder ones I had to learn when I was learning to play, because it begins at the end of the previous measure. So you're in, and you have to sort of jump up into that lick. And there's several ways you can do it with your right hand. The way I tend to do it when I'm playing is like that, with my middle, using my middle and index finger on the first and second strings. Another way you could do it is to bring your thumb down like that. And if I'm real tired or it's real fast, I usually use my thumb, but at more moderate tempos, I use my index finger. And then you do a pull-off with your left hand here on the third to second fret of the first string. So you have. Then we go through it the second time, and it begins just like the first time. And then you continue on. Okay, now at this point here, the ending four measures is a little bit different than we did the first time. And just as in Under the Double Eagle, we did this passage that I identified as a Doug Dillard thing. I do it again, and I do it in a lot of things that I do because I like it so much. And it goes like this. You start with your index finger, then a forward roll while you're fretting the fourth fret of the fourth string. So you have, and a good way to make that come out and sound effective is to, as soon as you sound that note, is to release it rather than leaving it down to ring, and you have a sort of a false note ringing over the note you want. So you'll have, and you'll have that dissonant sound in there slightly. So just as soon as you hit it, lift your finger off, and you don't have to pull it way off, just enough to dampen the note. Then you move on to your slide, from the 2nd to the 3rd fret with a forward roll. So that whole measure sounds like this. And then to get to the C note, rather than coming up from below, we're going to come down from above, like that. And that's also a similar passage that was in, or a similar little phrase that was in under the double eagle. And once again, I finger it just the same way with my right hand. Middle, thumb, middle, index, and then thumb. So you have actually all 3 fingers playing on 2 strings in some fashion. And then you end it the 2nd time through just like the 1st time. Okay, now we're going to go into the 2nd part of the tune, and it starts with a slide on the 1st string, 2nd to 5th fret. Once again, hold your finger down the whole way and make it come out real good and smooth. And that's the 1st measure, is just a forward roll. After you do the slide, you do a forward roll, and then put your little finger down on the 7th fret. And then the next measure of this part will sound like this. And that's just a forward roll. Actually, you'll be ending up on that with that finger. And then you do a little square roll. Put your 1st finger down on the 2nd fret. And then when I do that, then the next measure is going to have a bar at the 3rd fret. And what I do is I really don't lift this off and then put it back down. I just sort of scooch it up there and like that. And it stays on the string the whole time. And this is, I learned this tune originally from a recording of Bill Keith with Bill Monroe, and I never could do it like he did it, so I did it some way that sort of sounded like that, and it comes out like this. You do a alternating roll for half a measure, and then a reverse roll. And what I'm doing is I'm having these frets, or these 2 strings barred at the 3rd fret, and then I come over to the 5th fret of the 3rd string. And then I do this tricky little maneuver where the middle finger of my right hand comes over and plays the 2nd string. So that's usually referred to as an inside roll. When your middle finger's on the 1st string, it's called an outside roll. So you do an inside roll that starts on your 5th string. And now I've got additionally my little finger down on the 5th fret. So you get that sound. So those 2 measures sound like this. Then I go back to this. And then the ending phrase, although it starts with that, which sounds like the same thing we did with the bar, I'm fingering it like this because I'm not going this direction this time. We're going to stay down this direction, so I use these fingers. That's an alternating pattern. And then another alternating pattern where I do a hammer-on with the 1st to 2nd finger, and then a roll across a chord or a position that has your 1st finger, 1st fret, 2nd string, 3rd finger there. And I give that just a slight little tug just to give it a sort of a blues effect. So the 2nd time through, the B part would sound like this. And that would be a good version of Salt Creek, but I've got a up-the-neck variation that I would offer to you, so let's move on to that one. This variation on Salt Creek incorporates some ideas that I've learned from some fiddlers here in Texas, and then also a couple of my own that I've added in here. So let's go through that real quickly. And this second time through, or this first time through the variation, begins with this, which is a roll across the open strings. Then you're adding this E note, which is at the second fret, or the fifth fret of the second string, index finger, then your thumb on the fifth string. And that's sort of a substitute for this, that the opening did low. So when you do it up high, this is one way to play that same kind of idea. And then we're going to shift way up here to the 12th fret of the second string and the 10th fret of the first string and get a position like this. And I use these two fingers. You might want to do it like this depending on how your fingers lay out and how they stretch. And I'm going to use my thumb in this particular grip that I'm going to get here to fret the 5th string at the 12th fret. And then I'm going to use my little finger to get the 14th fret of the first string. And if you want to finger it differently, you might try it like this. There are players that don't use their thumb very much and try to use fingers on all the strings, but I use my thumb on this one. And it sounds like this. And what that is you're starting on the second string, then first string, and then fifth string where you're fretting it with your thumb, and then you reach up on the first string with your little finger, and then once again you're playing with your thumb on the fifth string and while fretting it with the thumb of your left hand on the fifth string. And then you roll on over to this C note. And that sort of takes the place of this. Let's take a moment and look at this next section that I'm proud of because I sort of came up with it my own self, as they say in bluegrass. And it is the part that in the lower section, or the lower variation, it was this. And up the neck, it'll be out of this position here, which this is F. Normally it would just be a bar, but the position I'm going to use is the F note on the 10th fret of the third string, and then a G sharp or an A flat on the 9th of the second string, then a A on the first string at the 7th fret, so you get this sound. And then we're going to use our third string over on the 10th fret of the first string and do a triplet, which will sound like this. And that's played just thumb, index, middle, and then your thumb coming over and hitting the third string at the 10th fret. And then continuing on, it will sound like this. So that whole phrase will be this. And then you would go back to the first opening statement, which we've done before. And then the closing part of this will be this position here. And this is nothing I heard from anybody else or did anything. It's just one of those times where you get in this grip and do this roll and see what happens. And this is basically what happened. And what I've got is my first finger at the 13th fret, second string, third finger, first string at the 15th, and then I bring my thumb around and it's at the 14th fret, and then I'm going to use my little finger to kind of flop it around up here, and it's going to sound like this. And then I move down to here. And slow, what it is, it's just this position with a reverse roll. Then you put your little finger down at the 17th fret and do it again, and you get it up. And that puts you in the next measure. So it's just reverse, 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 reverse all the way through. And then here you fret the 5th string at the 10th fret with your thumb. And you have that closing phrase there. Now let's go to the B part of this variation. And it's played like this. That's the first measure. Slide up here. Then you shift to this position here, second string, second finger, second string, 5th fret, and then your first finger there. And then it goes up to what you might identify as a bar just looking at the tablature, but here I use those fingers like that. And this is more of a fiddle tune or a fiddle variant. And then we're going to shift into this position here, and we're going to use this chord, which is an F chord, but we're going to just use it in little pieces as we roll across that chord. and it's going to sound like this. So we use it, and we're adding in open strings as we roll across. First we lift up the little finger and the first string is open. Then our index finger comes over and catches the middle string, and then thumb on the fourth string, and then open on the first string. So that measure is. And then we continue on like that. And then we're going to jump down here and get a single string, 2 notes on the same string, ending on the F note at the 3rd fret. So that whole passage is. And then we're going back and doing the opening 2 measures. And then we come up with this, what I think is a neat sort of fiddle variant. And that's played out of this position here, which we used in the first variation, first finger here, and then these 2 at the 5th fret of the 2nd string and 5th fret of the 3rd string. Do a reverse, or start with our middle finger on the roll, and then do a forward roll, and then just up and down. Now this is kind of tricky, which we're going to get this position, which is the first finger, 5th fret, 3rd finger, 7th fret. And we're going to do a roll that covers all 4 strings, like that, except we're going to use these fingers, middle, thumb, index, thumb. And then we're going to end up, our middle finger is going to play the 2nd string open, thumb on the 3rd string. So that last measure, or 2 measures. And there you have Salt Creek. That's a real beautiful and interesting tune there that I learned from a recording by Eric Weisberg many, many years ago on an album he did probably in the early 60s, and it was called New Dimensions in Bluegrass and Banjo, and I talked to him about it, and he seemed to think it was just a traditional tune, so I included it on my album Festival Favorites, the Nashville Sessions, and had Sam Bush and Jerry Douglas playing with me, and it was turned out to be what I thought was a real beautiful piece. And it's played in a real unusual tuning, and we should go through that just real briefly so you can not only get tuned up, but you could even find it. And it took me quite a while to find it, and I heard Sonny Osborne use this same tuning on a song called The New John Henry Blues, which is where I actually learned the tuning from, but not the tune. The first string is D, which is normal, but all the other strings are different. The 2nd string is an A note. The 3rd string is a G note. I'm sorry, the 3rd string is E. So you have to tune down from G to E. Then the 4th string is B. So you tune down from a D note down to a B. Then the 5th string is at an A note. And you can either tune it up to an A, or I use the 5th string peg here. I don't know if you can see it, but I have a small peg that the string slips under. And if you strum across it, you get this sound. And that's like a D 6/9 chord. And a D chord in this, when you get to playing accompaniment, to get a D chord out of it, you'd need to put your finger here at the 2nd fret, 3rd string, and the 3rd fret of this other string. And you'd get a D chord. And this is kind of a hard tuning to get into because all the strings change, but it's worth it. And to play it is actually not incredibly difficult because it turns out being a fairly Scruggs-oriented kind of a tune. So we'll go through it real quickly. And it starts with the pickup notes indicated in your tablature, then, which is sort of a Foggy Mountain breakdown roll on the, but now it's on the 4th string. Then you come up here to the 4th fret and 5th fret and hammer onto the 5th. Now here, you have to move up to the 7th fret and you do this passage. And watch my right hand finger so you get it correct. Then you get to a B minor chord, and to play this chord, you're going to need your 2nd finger. What I use is my 2nd finger at the 2nd fret, 3rd string, and my 3rd finger at the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. You strum across it, you get that, and then you do a forward reverse roll. Then the next measure is that you hit the B note, do that, and then you do the pickup notes. And then we repeat that opening phrase again. Okay, now here we're going to go to an E minor chord like that, and the way you get it is you just, the way I do it is just bar across at the 2nd fret, the first 2 strings, and we go like this. And there I'm putting my 4th finger down at the 4th fret. Then the next measure is kind of tricky, because what you have to do is you go from a bar, and then you need to get your 1st string open. And what I do is when I bar this position here is I make the 2nd string sort of right at the tip of my finger, so that when I can just roll over and still be fretting the 2nd string, 2nd fret, but let the 1st string open, so I go like that. And then your 3rd finger needs to come, or your 2nd finger comes over to the 3rd fret, and you do this roll that starts with your index finger like that, except when you go across, after you do that, you lift this finger up, and so it's, so those 2 measures sound like this. Yes, I'm sorry. And then we're going to go hammer on there and do like a Foggy Mountain breakdown roll. Then the next measure is this. And then we repeat that same passage again. I'm sorry. Then the way I recorded it, I repeated the first part again, but rather than doing that, we're going to go on to the 2nd half. So you're ending up at the 2nd ending. That's a hammer on 1st, 2nd fret of the 4th string. And then you slide 2 to 5 with your 2nd finger like that, and then you catch this 1st string with the 1st finger. In the next measure, you're doing a reverse roll while you have your finger here at the 7th fret. I'm sorry, it'll be right, and then you hammer on and do a forward roll, and then we're going to play 2 sort of single intervals, 2 notes together like that, and then this. And that's all I do. I finger it with my 2nd finger. And there we're on, once again, on our B minor chord. And you do a forward reverse roll. And we do these pickup notes just like we did to get into the part originally. We do the same passage. Now here, rather than going down low, we're going to go up to the high B, which sounds like this. Excuse me. And that's all just like sort of playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown. And then we repeat the opening passage again. Okay, now this time we're going to do something a little different. First time we did this, but this time we're going to do it. And that's just a roll that begins with your middle finger and then forward with your second finger at the 7th fret. So you have, then you shift down and do this little phrase that we've done before. And when we get here, that sort of rolls just to mark time through those measures. And then we repeat the ending 4 measures that we did in the A section. Now, after you've done that, that's the whole tune. So you can see it's got some new fingerings and a new tuning, but it's still good old Earl Scruggs kind of style banjo picking. And now let's do the ending, which is this, which is sort of a Don Reno adaptation, or my adaptation of a Don Reno ending. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong string there. Then you come up to this position, and I have my first finger at the 4th fret, and with my little finger I'm getting the 7th fret. Then the ending, descending ending part is this. It's just, and that's starting on the 1st string, 4th fret, 2nd string, 7th fret. Then you move over to the 7th fret of the 3rd string and do a roll. I'm sorry, just 2 notes. 3rd string, 2nd string. Then you move over to the 7th fret of the 4th string. And here we're going to do an inside roll. And then remember, that's where your middle finger comes over the 2nd string. And it goes thumb, index, middle. So the whole thing is this. Then this. And that's the ending, and the band retards at that point, and then you play these harmonics, and it's just the 12th, 7th, and then 5th, and it's then if you want to put a nice little touch to it, you get a little vibrato by pressing and releasing on the banjo head there, and there you have No Title Yet Blues. That was Old Joe Clark from my Festival Favorites albums that'll be on both Rounder and Ridge Runner, and Roland White played a really great mandolin solo on that. And this was, in my learning years, I can remember sitting out in my parents' garage, sitting in their car, trying to figure this tune out. And the difficult part for me, which will probably be real easy for you, is that the tune doesn't actually start on the downbeat. It starts on just prior to the downbeat of the song with those 2 pickup notes there, and that threw me off. But after I figured that out, the rest of it worked real easily. So if you look at your tablature, you just start with that hammer on and those 2 notes, and then you do a forward roll across this position here. Then you bring your 3rd finger down and do an alternating pattern with your right hand, and that gets you through the first measure. And the way I do this second part is like this. I'm sorry. And that's just with my 2nd finger at the 5th fret. And then after you hit that string, the B string open, you go right back into the opening And then here normally you would just play a D note and sort of pause before you start again, but I heard John Hickman just continue and do this, and it was a nice little touch. So the first 4 measures sounds like this. And then the next 3 measures are just like the first 3 measures of that part. Except you tack on that little skip lick. And then you have the ending phrase, which I play. It sounds like this. And that's just with your right hand, that's an alternating pattern beginning with your thumb. And that's how you have that ending. Now the second time through I played a variation that is sort of a melodic fiddle tune feel to it. And I start, now this one does start on the downbeat. It's different than the first time through. And I start with a slide with my first finger rather than a hammer on, because I'm going to immediately shift to this position here, and it just gets my fingers a little quicker into position. So it sounds like this. And then that's the first measure. And then the second measure is, it's just a scale. I think it's fairly clear. And then you repeat that opening first measure, and then you end in the midpoint. Then we're going to go into another thing, but I want to play those first 4 measures of that part again, just to have it all together. Come up here because we're going to do this passage that sounds like this. And rather than explain every note of it, I'm going to tell you it's this position like this, then I switch to this with those, and then here, and then here, and then finishing off with that. So just review the tape and look at the tablature, and I believe it'll be more evident than any words I could speak. Now going on to the second B part of the tune, we're ending the ending of the A part. You would hit the G note and then do this roll. It comes back with your index finger, and then slide in a pinch, and then forward roll, slide. So that first measure and a half. Now this measure here, the roll is a forward reverse roller, and it begins in the middle of the second measure of the B part and ends at the second half of the second measure of the B part, and ends at the second or the midpoint of the next measure. So it's a forward reverse roll that sort of transcends or goes across the bar line. Starting right here. And then here you use a alternating pattern beginning on your 5th string. And then we're going to do this in the F chord. That's an alternating pattern with your right hand. Then a pull off. And that gives you your F passage. Then we're going to do this, which is the Doug Dillard thing again. And then I do a C note and a pinch on a C chord there, so it sounds. And then we're going to do that forward reverse roll that comes out, starts in the middle of one measure and ends at the middle of another measure. And then the ending passage is. Now the second time through, it's going to sound like this. That's the Doug Dillard thing. And then this is kind of tricky. And you do the roll part is you use your thumb down here, the middle index, and then right away you're sliding into this, which is clear in the tablature there. Then the next measure, the third measure of this time through. And then we're going to do the F just like we did earlier. And then this ending phrase uses some elements of the opening statement coupled with sort of a Foggy Mountain breakdown lick, so you have, as I played there. So with that is Old Joe Clark, and it's got some really great stuff in it, lots of different variations, and you can mix them up and play them in several orders. And I suggest you listen to John Hickman and Bill Emerson play this tune. They've got some really great things to offer. And now let's go on to the last tune, which is Cripple Creek. Everybody has their own ideas on Cripple Creek, and I'd like to offer a few variations that I have here while we have a moment. And the first one will sound like this. And that would be a variation of the A part, and what it is, it's these pickup notes, then fifth string. Okay, and then here's the kind of neat part I learned from one of the Fiddlin' Solomon family around Montague and Rome, Texas, is they play just an arpeggio across the C chord. And that's how I do it, is thumb, index, thumb, middle. Then I catch the D note with my little finger. And you play the same thing you did at the opening. And then this. Here's another A part that I do sometimes. And that is a little more complicated. Opens up the same way, and then you fret the 7th fret with your 2nd and 3rd fingers. And then this is your C chord, and you start your roll with your index finger. And you jump over to this position, which is the 5th fret, 1st finger, then there. So you have. And then this roll is similar to what we did in Salt Creek. It's middle, thumb, index, middle, across the position here, 1st finger, 5th fret, 3rd finger, 7th fret. And then you do an inside roll, finishing up on your 1st string, and then, so that's another variation. Now here's a variation I do on the B part, which normally is this. That part, but my part is going to sound like this. And that's played with this position here, 2nd finger, 10th fret, 1st finger, 9th fret. You roll up, hit the 12th fret of the 1st string, and then do a pull-off. Stopping on the 10th fret there, and then do the same thing again. Then roll on like that. One other quick thing you can do is a lot of times, rather than that, you could do pull-offs. So there's quite a number of variations you could do on Cripple Creek, and I hope you've enjoyed being with us on this tape, and I'd like to finish off Festival Favorites by playing just a little bit of Cripple Creek.